Okay, what causes low testosterone in men today? And what are the health consequences of low testosterone? Well, first of all, we know that as we age, testosterone levels will decline. It usually peaks in our early 20s, then decreases by around an average of 1% per year, starting around the age of 30. However, this does not occur in all men. I've seen this, I've looked at thousands of lab tests over several years. But testosterone becomes more noticeable of a decline if people have got poor genetics, lifestyle habits, poor nutritional habits, also some health conditions. Studies also show that men's testosterone levels have been declining for decades, and regardless of age. And the most prominent study in 2007 in the study of the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism revealed a substantial drop in US men's testosterone levels since the 1980s, with an average level declining by approximately 1% per year. This means, for example, that a 60-year-old man in 2004 had testosterone levels 17% lower than those of a 6-year-old in 1987. We also know that testosterone levels in men have been steadily declining over the past few decades. And as I said, it's not just due to aging. We now understand that research is clearly showing that environmental toxins and endocrine disruptors play a significant role in the trend. These toxins are found in plastics, foods, drinking water, personal care products, dental materials, prescription medication, household items, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, etc. They interfere with hormone production, metabolism, cell receptor sensitivity, and fertility. Many men will then experience symptoms of low testosterone like fatigue, weight gain, brain fog, depression, muscle loss, without realizing that environmental toxins may be at the root cause of their health complaints. A team of scientists from the Medical Research Council Centre for Reproductive Health at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland made also the discovery that after undertaking an investigation into why some men may have higher testosterone levels than others when living relatively simple lifestyle as adults, they wanted to find out why. Recognizing that high testosterone is essential for men's physical and mental health, the researchers decided to take a closer look at how this hormone is affected during pregnancy. They looked specifically at Leydig cells, which live in men's testes and begin generating the testosterone hormone at puberty. Men's Leydig cells don't work as well when the mother is exposed to too much estrogen. Now, as it turns out, men whose mothers do not have the proper testosterone levels during pregnancy tend to inherit lower functioning Leydig cells, resulting in reduced production of this necessary hormone throughout their lives. Then consequently, many of these men end up suffering from hormonal imbalances, which make them more prone to obesity, diabetes, depression, heart disease, and also other mental forms of illness. You'll see the correlation between low testosterone and Alzheimer's shortly. There's also increasing evidence that a mother's diet, lifestyle, exposure to drugs, chemicals can have a significant effect on the testosterone levels in the womb, said the lead authors of that study. Now, also, research has shown that low-income mothers can also feminize their children in the womb by adjusting their hormones, whereas high-income mothers can musculize their children, a major study based on finger length led by Swansea University. This phenomenon is an unconscious evolutionary response aimed at boosting their offspring's chance of successful reproduction. And it also helps, in part, explain the association between low income, low levels of testosterone before birth and major causes of mortality such as cardiovascular disease. And the study was based on the relationship between the length of a person's index and ring finger, known as the 2D/4D ratio. A longer ring finger, that indicates higher levels of testosterone, whereas a longer index finger is a marker of higher levels of estrogen. Now, for example, going back to the womb, paracetamol, the main component over-the-counter painkillers, can damage the testicles of the embryos and reduce the amount of testosterone they produce, shows a new study. The scientists behind the study believe this may explain evidence that pregnant women's use of painkillers is linked to an increased risk of deformed testicles and something called cryptorchidism, where the testicles do not fall properly into place. And this is the first time that a study of human testicles from embryos show that the compound paracetamol almost halved the production of testosterone after 7 days of use, says the researchers. So you can see that what the mother consumed has a huge effect on testosterone levels of the embryo, which obviously becomes a child adult. The research is showing clearly that things like phthalates, which are also known as endocrine disruptors, can also affect the hormonal balance in the body. It appears that men are particularly susceptible. Studies show that phthalate exposure in the womb also lead then to genital malformations, undescended testicles, and also low testosterone levels. We also know that many agricultural pesticides, including some previously untested, commonly found in food, also disrupt male hormones, according to tests carried out by British scientists. The scientists strongly recommended that all pesticides in use today be screened to check if they block testosterone and other androgens, the hormone critical to a healthy reproductive system for both men and boys. Androgens are male characteristic hormones. Their results indicate that systematic testing for anti-androgenic activity of currently used pesticides is urgently required, wrote the scientists from University of London Centre for Toxicology. 30 out of the 37 widely used pesticides tested by the group blocked or mimicked male hormones. 16 of the 30 had no known hormonal activity until now, while there was some previous evidence for the other 14, according to the study published online in the Scientific Journal of Environmental Health Perspectives. Now, most of the newly discovered hormone disruptors are fungicides applied to fruit and vegetable crops. Traces of the chemicals remain in the foods, and the study indicate that, not surprisingly, there are many other endocrine disruptors that we have not yet identified or know very little about, said the researchers. Now, environmental factors, including exposure to xenoestrogens, negatively impact the reproductive health of humans and leads to the feminization of males. Now, this isn't new news. Scientists have known this since 1996 and demonstrated in a study titled Male Reproductive Health and Environmental Xenoestrogens. And the authors of that study concluded that male reproductive health has deteriorated in many countries during the last few decades, and confirmed that during the same period, semen quality declined while the rates of testicular cancer increased. Now, this is noticeable because male feminization is a side effect of the negative impact of xenoestrogens have on the male reproductive system. And xenoestrogens are simply foreign chemicals that act like estrogen. They bind to estrogen receptors of cells in our body. They then disrupt the endocrine system, which is responsible for hormonal production, leading to disease, the growth of adipose tissue, infertility in humans of all ages. And many xenoestrogens exert some of their damaging effects by lowering testosterone levels because of their similar molecular structure as you would expect to the naturally occurring estrogen. Xenoestrogens will bind to and activate its receptors in the body, leading then to overstimulation of estrogenic pathways. Now, it's also hard to predict what would result directly from such an estrogenic response, but we do know this: many tissues in the body are sensitive to even the smallest changes in estrogen concentrations. And we also know through some animal studies that suggest that xenoestrogens may have a direct toxic effect on the testes, leading then to a decreased testosterone production. And is there also things like estrogen, in tap water, for example? If so, why is there estrogen in tap water? In 2012, researchers concluded that it would cost Britain £30 billion to rid its water of estradiol alone, which is the strongest of all the estrogens. Estradiol is a major type of estrogen. that more than 2.5 million British women on the contraceptive pill, and you can also say HRT, is probably more now, this is 2012, which flushed down the toilet. They can't get it out of the water supply. Researchers found this potent hormone in 80% of the water at the 50 sites that they tested. And unsurprisingly, the government, nor the water suppliers, nor those pay the household bills are keen on this cleanup effort. And this is just estradiol. And also the pharmaceutical industry is actively lobbying against it over fears that it would have to contribute as well to the cleanup. So we have all these hormone mimicking chemicals used routinely in things like toiletries, cosmetics, medicines, plastics, pesticides, etc. And they're all thought to be particularly harmful to the male reproductive health and can cause testicular cancer, we've seen infertility, deformation of the penis, and also undescended testicles. And the new study published in a medical journal showed that endocrine-disrupting chemicals found in antiperspirants reduce male fertility by 30%. Another study in JAMA, they found that chemical ingredients from things like sunscreen were detected in the bloodstream after one use, sometimes for days after. These ingredients have also been shown to lower testosterone levels. And in one human study, it was noted people who suffer from skeletal fluorosis with this too high intake of fluoride also have significantly lower levels of testosterone compared to controlled subjects. Things like mercury, which is ubiquitous, has been also shown to decrease lutein's hormone, and lead and lead has also done that as well. And other heavy metals have been shown to decrease testosterone. Lutein's hormone is a brain hormone, tells the nuts to make testosterone. Research studies also show things like arsenic reduces testosterone production, testosterone levels by affecting gene expression, mitochondrial health, hormone receptor levels, and enzymatic activity. Now, in addition to lowering testosterone levels, preclinical and clinical research studies suggest that chronic arsenic exposure could be a significant cause of infertility, low sperm quality, and erectile dysfunction. Arsenic is a colorless, odorless, tasteless toxic metal that could be unintentionally ingested at every meal. It is naturally present in groundwater and soil. According to the World Health Organization, the most common source of daily arsenic exposure is drinking water. Many additional sources of arsenic can also lurk in the kitchen. Commonly eaten foods including grains, beef, seafood, shellfish, poultry, and vegetables can have high arsenic levels. I mean, I had my bloods done not so long ago. I had a high amount of arsenic in my blood. Rice naturally absorbs 10 times more arsenic than other grains. So rice and rice-based products are noteworthy sources of arsenic exposure. Then you're looking at recent research exposure to lead and aluminium could also reduce testosterone production. Moreover, aluminium exposure could lower the number of androgen receptors in the testes, so the testosterone that is produced and circling in the body is unable to stimulate optimum sperm production and reproductive function. Now, then we're looking at toxins and pesticides. They destroy mitochondrial function, and this is where our hormones like testosterone is initially manufactured out of cholesterol. And then furthermore, then some herbicides induce these hormonal shifts leading to estrogen excess and increased fat deposition. These herbicides, including the widely used atrazine, induce aromatase activity by as much as 250%. Aromatase is the key enzyme in converting androgens into estrogens. There is also a wealth of evidence that obesity is negatively correlated with testosterone levels. One study, for example, found that men compared men who had a healthy weight to obese men were 8 times as likely to have low testosterone. One of the reasons why is the more abdominal fat you have, the more aromatase you produce. Obesity holds the title as the most effective predictor of low testosterone in men out of many possible risk factors. And it's a vicious cycle, obesity, because fat cells, as I've just said, they are known to be a source of aromatase, the enzyme then, which then converts testosterone into estradiol and androstenedione into estrone. Low testosterone then results in the formation also of abdominal fat, which then in turn causes more aromatase enzymes. So the more obese the male, the lower the testosterone, the more aromatase, and it's a vicious cycle. And the result then is one of the most common Findings of researchers studying the relationship between testosterone and obesity. Obese men have low levels of testosterone and extraordinary high levels of estrogen, very easy measured on a blood and also a urine test. High aromatase then and estrogen activity also reduce the production of what is known as gonadotropin releasing hormones. These are simply hormones from the brain telling the testes to make testosterone and also sperm. So it gets conned that there's a lot of testosterone around, but there's not. Now, the impact also of cortisol on testosterone, the cortisol levels increase when we're under stress and we're in fight or flight mode. This is triggered. When cortisol levels spike under stress, your body will block testosterone as a response. And this makes sense. This happens because testosterone-related actions, such as mating or aggression, are not essential when your body is in fight or flight mode, trying to escape potential harm. Now, the body will also produce stress hormones, in particularly high cortisol, when faced with chronic chemical problems, physical stress, emotional stress, can be financial stress. Cortisol is the antithesis to testosterone. The reason why the testicles produce an enzyme called 11-BHSD1, which protects your testosterone molecules from the effects of testosterone during times of prolonged stress and chronically elevated levels of cortisol. There's simply too much cortisol for 11-BHSD1 to handle. Now, what this results in is testosterone molecules being destroyed in the testes before they can even enter the bloodstream. So cortisol then interferes how effectively testosterone can bind to its receptors within muscle cells, which essentially then lowers our testosterone levels. This is known as testosterone resistance. You could have loads in the bloodstream, but it can't get into the cells. Sleep also lowers testosterone levels. Cutting back on sleep drastically reduces our testosterone levels. According to one study, for example, in the American Medical Association, it was shown that the men who slept for less than 5 hours a night for 1 week in a laboratory, they had significantly lower levels of testosterone than when they had a full night's sleep. So I'm just trying to explain the picture on what's really crushing our nuts from a testosterone perspective. And then what are the health consequences for low testosterone? Research shows, for example, there's a strong correlation between decline in testosterone levels in men and the risk of dying from any cause. The latest study to lend support to that idea comes from Denmark, where between 1982 and 1984, Danish scientists got 1,167 men between the ages of 30 and 60 to enroll in a long-term study of mortality and death rates. And then blood samples were collected from the men at enrollment and again in a follow-up examination between the years 1993 and 1994. And the researchers were specifically looking at levels of serum testosterone, lutein's and hormone. Remember, that's a signal hormone, sex hormone binding globulin. The more sex hormone binding globulin you have, the less free testosterone available. The participants then were tracked for another 18 years after the 93-94 exam, during which time 421 deaths occurred. 106 deaths were related to cancer, 199 were from cardiovascular disease, while the other deaths comes from the usual assortment of less common diseases, things like accidents and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here is the really interesting thing, okay? Those who suffered the greatest 10-year decline in testosterone were more likely to die from any cause in comparison with other participants. Without a doubt, low testosterone is one of the major causes also of things like osteoporosis in aging men. Researchers out of Germany have recently published a report estimating that 50% of all bone fractures in males over 60 years of age is a result of osteoporosis induced by low testosterone levels. And then complementing that report, researchers in France studying the relationship also between testosterone and male osteoporosis have also found that by the age of 80, as much as 20% of the bone mass density of males was lost in part due to having low levels of testosterone. So let's look at them like, what's the importance then between testosterone levels and the age in heart? This is just extraordinary information. Coronary heart disease, as we know, is one of the leading causes of premature death in men. Research has shown that a high prevalence of men with low levels of testosterone are diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. Testosterone deficiency plays a role in chronic heart failure. Reduction in circulating testosterone levels is a predictor of deterioration of functional capacity over time. This deterioration is seen as reduced muscle mass, abnormal energy handling, fatigue, shortness of breath, and things like cachexia, muscle weakness and muscle loss. So many studies are also showing that not only does testosterone protect a man's arteries from hardening, but it can also partially reverse existing issues in many cases. A meta-study in the Journal of the American Heart Association looked at over 100 testosterone studies, and what they found was that low testosterone to be associated with abnormal EKG readings. Now, an abnormal EKG result can be a sign that one region or section of the heart is larger or thicker than the others. A thickened heart could then mean that the heart is working too hard to pump blood. Furthermore, they also found that men with higher levels of testosterone were 25% less likely to suffer from a cardiac arrest. In fact, the journal reported that low testosterone was associated with a higher rate of mortality, which we've seen previously in general, along with higher rates of cardiovascular mortality, obesity, and diabetes. And I'll explain how that occurs shortly as well. So can low testosterone then lead to high cholesterol? Okay, there's also a lot of evidence that links low testosterone levels with high cholesterol. According to a Harvard Health publication, low testosterone may contribute to cardiovascular disease, and research suggests that as testosterone increases, cholesterol decreases. How could this occur? Cholesterol helps our body make testosterone. Cells in the testes called Leydig cells take LDL cholesterol in our blood and it turns it into testosterone. With age, our Leydig cells may start to produce less testosterone. Researchers are now studying the connection between testosterone and cholesterol. However, one theory on why low testosterone is associated with high cholesterol is because the Leydig cells now are using less of the cholesterol to do things like to create all our steroid hormones, including testosterone. Now, we know HDL will remove cholesterol from the arterial wall and it'll return it to the liver for safe disposal via a process known as the reverse cholesterol transport. This is where testosterone comes in. It's required for optimum transport of excess cholesterol from our tissues and blood vessels to our liver for processing and disposal. In the testosterone deficient state, reverse cholesterol transport is compromised and excess cholesterol cannot be removed from the arterial wall. Also, getting to a target cell is no easy task for testosterone, since most cells, muscles, heart, tissues, lungs, the brain, are protected from what is known as the from the bloodstream, I should say, by the endothelial cells that line the blood vessel walls. There's a barrier. Now, if the endothelial cell barrier is functioning well, hormones like testosterone are not impeded from reaching target cells. Any dysfunction to the endothelial cells will cause dysfunction of the hormonal system by decreasing the concentration of the active hormone in what is known as the interstitial space. If the hormone can't get to its target site, it's as if it weren't there in the first place, even though there may be higher than normal levels of testosterone in the bloodstream. And this is why you can't always rely on blood tests to tell you what your testosterone levels are. You can definitely indicate production, but not what's going on in the coalface on the receptors. Why testosterone is important for the brain. In one study that pooled a lot of data from several previous trials, men with low testosterone were on average 48% more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than those with normal levels. Now, a recent review and meta-analysis of 27 studies with over 18,000 participants found an increased risk of all cause of dementia with decreasing total testosterone levels. Researchers also point to an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease with lower levels of free and total testosterone. In fact, studies show that older men with depression tend to have lower testosterone levels that are nearly 20% below normal. I see it all the time. Androgen receptors, which testosterone bind to, are abundant in brain regions such as the hippocampus, the area responsible for learning and memory, and the amygdala, which regulates our emotions. So you can see the effect that low testosterone can have. So this indicates that testosterone has a direct impact on cognitive performance and emotional well-being. A 2016 study found that men with low levels of testosterone were associated with an 86% increase of depression. This study echoed earlier research which has consistently found a strong correlation between the two, indicating a causal relationship. In fact, even borderline testosterone levels are associated with significantly higher rates of depression or depressive symptoms, and this is significant not only because it may help some men uncover the roots of the depression, but because it offers a potential solution. It's called testosterone replacement therapy. A 2019 review, a meta-analysis, also of 27 randomized controlled trials, they found that testosterone treatment to be very effective and efficacious in reducing depressive symptoms in men. And in another study published in the Archives of General Psychiatry, researchers reviewed the medical records of 278 men for 2 years. All the men over the age of 45 had no diagnosis of depression when they started the study. And then the study indicated then that men who had low testosterone were 4 times more likely to develop clinical depression. And testosterone is absolutely responsible for the masculine need for victory and for challenge. One study showed that men's testosterone levels may predict whether he'll persevere through defeat or give in when faced with adversity. Testosterone has also been linked to risk-taking. In higher status men with high testosterone levels have higher social status and tend to be more risk prone. You don't throw the towel and you don't break at the first hurdle. You keep hanging in there. That's what we're supposed to do as men. Okay, why testosterone then is also so important for building muscle and losing excess body fat. We know then that testosterone is one of the most important anabolic hormones produced by our body, and studies have shown that subjects with higher testosterone levels have higher levels of something known as muscle satellite cell activity. Testosterone activity activates, satellite cells, which are specialized muscle stem cells located around muscle fibers. When they are activated, they proliferate and they differentiate into new muscle cells, contributing to muscle growth. Also, there's something known as myostatin, which is the greatest single catabolic muscle breakdown factor that we know of today. And it increases also with low testosterone and aging. In short, myostatin exists in our body and basically works to limit how much muscle that we can actually build. Now, what I found interesting as a high-performance coach, research found that testosterone therapy decreased the expression of myostatin in muscle. This is consistent with and likely contributes to the testosterone effects on muscle growth. Now, interestingly, then, also increasing testosterone levels leads to a reduction in myostatin. The lower the myostatin, the greater the potentiation for muscle growth. There are other things that lower myostatin as well, creatine being one. Testosterone can also play a very significant role in muscle protein synthesis. Various studies show that testosterone greatly increases muscle hypertrophy and muscle protein synthesis by as much as 27%. It also seems that testosterone positively affects something known as the mTOR pathway in how it regulates protein synthesis. mTOR is the most important pathway for muscle growth. Low testosterone signals a decrease in muscle protein synthesis, and this makes logical sense. When testosterone is given to men, muscle protein synthesis and muscle mass increases. You're lowering myostatin, you're increasing mTOR, you're increasing muscle satellite cells. What could be more better than that? Also, the interesting thing with testosterone as well, it will signal more stem cells to become muscle cells instead of fat cells. So it's a signaler as well. In the body, we have pluripotent stem cells that could develop into either fat cells or muscle satellite cells. Under the influence of testosterone, These stem cells are more likely to evolve into muscle satellite cells. What more could you want? This not only decreases the capacity to form fat cells in the body, it also increases our capacity for muscular repair, regeneration, and hypertrophy. Now, testosterone also appears to affect the fat cell metabolism and fat loss in a few other ways as well. Things like inhibiting fat storage by blocking a key enzyme called lipoprotein lipase that is necessary for the uptake of fats into the body fat cells. Testosterone also stimulates fat burning by increasing the number of certain receptors on the cell membrane that release stored fat. And one of the big things it does as well, it increases insulin sensitivity and improves fat and insulin metabolism while enhancing growth of muscle fibers and decreasing fat deposits. All of these effects benefit body composition by promoting lean body mass and reducing body fat. So also a link between type 2 diabetes and how testosterone is well established. Men with diabetes type 2 are more likely to have low testosterone, and men with low testosterone are more likely to later develop type 2 diabetes. Testosterone, this is key, helps the body's tissue take up more sugar in response to insulin. So simply by decreasing your toxic load, eating organic, nutrient-dense foods, drinking clean filtered water, having regular saunas, for example, reducing your stress levels can have a significant effect on increasing your testosterone levels. So hopefully you now understand what's driving testosterone levels down in men today and have a better understanding of the importance of testosterone in optimizing our health, both physically and mentally. I've written a whole workshop on testosterone if you want to check out my site, Phil Richards Nutrition Lab. Thanks for listening.